Hello, gurus. Welcome to week 3, Discover Your Inner Guru Fall 2020 edition. I'm so excited to be here, and it's kind of crazy that we're already almost halfway through the 6 weeks. Today is exciting because we get to start to dive a little bit deeper into the skill of observation. But before we do that, I want to just do a little housekeeping. First of all, I wanted to remind you all of the resource of an accountability partner that you have available to you. Again, just to clarify, an accountability partner is not to make sure that you're doing the work or to check in on you or to be your coach or motivator. That is not what the accountability partner is for. From my perspective, what I feel that it's for is someone to celebrate with, someone to be a trusted listener, to bounce ideas off of, to externally process with, to maybe just share your experiences and learn from each other. So this is, to me, what the accountability partnership is more about, because honestly, I don't really personally function very well with an accountability partner that's like trying to make sure I'm doing the work, because we're trying to clear ourselves of the shame and judgment energy and this kind of striving mentality, and like I don't want anyone to feel like they're in trouble if they're not doing the work or anything like that, because this is your journey, right? You get to make it what you will for yourself. So there's that. And then the Q&A is Thursday at 6 p.m. Just a reminder. We did record last week because I've just been getting enough feedback that would be really helpful for some people who are dealing with time differences, time zone differences. So just know that I will only post those on the email. So I won't even be posting it on the Facebook page, because there's people on the Facebook group that aren't in this group, and I just want to make sure I'm honoring the privacy of those in this group. Okay, and then the last thing is keep working on your reboot and reset. Just because we're in week 3 does not mean you skip that step. Just keep working on that and adding a little bit every day to your current week homework. And yeah, so keep on keeping on with that. So this week is, again, it's all about diving deeper into the skill of observation through cultivating our skill of awareness. And what does that actually mean? And before we dive deeper, I just want to talk a little bit more about why is this skill of observation so important? And why is this like the core content of the entire 6 weeks of Discover Your Inner Guru? And there are 3 key, I mean, I know there's a lot more than this, but there are 3 key things that I want to remind you of why this is so important, why cultivating this skill and getting really good at it is so important. In order for us to really progress, in order for us to really learn the lessons, to gather the information, we have to learn how to free ourselves from shame and judgment. We have to learn how to see things as they really are. And so this skill of observation, it opens us to learning. It provides a safe space to gather information and data so that we can learn what works and what doesn't work. Right? Because that's how we learn. It's like, okay, what's working for me? What isn't working for me? And if we're so entrenched in, well, I'm a bad person because this happened, we're not going to be able to see clearly to actually get to the point of, all right, what's working for me and what's not working for me, and then I'm going to make a conscious choice and choose what does work for me. And that's how we get out of the hamster wheel, right? That's how we make permanent long-term change. And then the second point that I want to make of why the skill of observation is so important is it shifts our perspective. Human nature and cultural society has us in this sort of destination mentality where, like, when I get the big job, then I'll be valuable and lovable. When I get this award or this medal, then I'll be loved and I'll be amazing. And, you know, whatever it is, then I'll feel like I've arrived, you know? So there's kind of this destination mentality in human nature and cultural society. And then there's this, like, I have to do something big and grand in order to be seen, heard, accepted, lovable, right? And so it keeps us, if we are stay in the hamster wheel of shame and judgment and unconscious reaction, then we don't really connect with the internal motivations. We don't really connect with what's deep inside of like who we are as divine beings of light. And so shifting our perspective from destination, achievement mentality into the present moment and embracing what I call the eternal perspective of learning and growth. And it takes so much pressure off of life when we just remember and remind ourselves, you know what? I am an eternal divine being having a human physical experience. And it's okay that I mess up because I learn from those mistakes. And so I'm going to be really present in what's happening right now, what's truth, what feels real. I'm going to honor my emotions, but it's going to keep me present so that I can stay in that perspective of like, this is what's so ironic is being in the present moment shifts us into eternal perspective, which, you know, in my understanding is not so much a future thing, but an all encompassing oneness thing, that God knows no time or space, that when we're in an eternal perspective, it's always about the here and now, the present moment. And then the third point of what I wanted to bring to your attention of why the skill of observation is so important is it helps us connect to our inherent value and worth as divine beings, as what I believe children of a loving Heavenly Father and Mother. And as long as we remember who we are and what our value is, that's going to help us connect to the strongest possible internal motivation of why do I even want to try? You know, because some days it's like, I just don't even want to try. I'm too tired. I'm in too much pain, emotionally, physically, whatever. I just don't even want to try. But it keeps us connected to our why. Why do we try? Why do we just keep on keeping on? And why do we get back up off our feet, dust ourselves off, and get going again? And it's that eternal perspective of who we really are. Why are we here? Why are we having this experience? And what does it all mean? Now, you can all have your own belief system about what I'm saying and just put it in your own words, in your own understanding, but these are universal concepts. All right, so that's why it's important. I know there's other reasons, but this is the ones I want to bring to your attention today. All right, so far we've learned about, like, here, let's actually review the steps of observation here for a second. Sorry, I had someone text me for a second, and just the way my brain works, it gets distracted. So I'm going to silence my phone here. All right, awesome. Okay, so number one is breathe, right? It's all about calming the parasympathetic nervous system, feeling it, being really present with it. You're allowing the energy to flow, but you're breathing through it. And you're reminding yourself, all right, we're safe. Nobody's dying here. And sometimes maybe somebody is, but even though someone might be dying or someone, you know, something horrible might be happening, I'm choosing to connect to love right now. Okay. And I'm doing that with the breath and with my intention. Number two, connecting to what is true, right? You're trying to create a distinction between what feels real versus what's actually true. And what's actually true is the most valuable data and information that you want to collect in order to learn, in order to be able to do something different and create maybe a different pattern of behavior or thought. So connecting to what is true. And number 3, making a conscious decision of reaction. And this could be just really simple. It could just be that in this moment, I'm choosing to love myself, even though this is what happened and that's how I felt about it. It might be, okay, from here on out, I'm going to set a healthier boundary. And maybe you're making a conscious decision or reaction that's sort of set into the future. Like, okay, next time this happens, this is what I'm choosing to do. This is going to be my reaction of choice. And that's my intention, because you're thinking, even though you're in the present moment, you still are like pulling those possible future, inevitable instances where you will react the same way, because you're trying to rewire the brain, right? And so rewiring the brain takes time. And those old neural pathways, or those unhealthy neural pathways, don't ever really go away, but they become dormant. As long as we can create new neural pathways in the brain that are primary pathways, and that we're reinforcing often, consistently over a long period of time. So the pathways that we use the most are the pathways that are going to sort of rule our unconscious reactions. Okay. All right. And then step 4. And again, the step 4, I've said before, that may or may not happen in that moment. It may happen later when you set aside some time. But connecting to inspired thought can take 2 seconds. It's just that moment of conscious stillness and saying, okay, what's my next step? What's my next breadcrumb is what I call it. Because that's all we need, you guys. We don't really need the whole picture, even though human nature really likes the whole picture. I mean, there's certain personalities that really want to know where we're going. I want my eyes wide open, and I want to know exactly, I don't want to go down this step until I know that those stairs lead me to somewhere useful and productive, right? So this is, a lot of life is faith, right? We have to be willing to step into the darkness. And if we feel peaceful and connected to our next step, that's enough. And that's all we need. And in fact, we can actually be more efficient in how we're expending our energy if we're just really focusing on that one thing, that one breadcrumb, that one next step. All right, so connect to inspired thought. So these are the basic steps of observation for those of you that like systems, but I'm sure by now some of you are realizing that this doesn't have to go in perfect order, that it can be a really organic flow rather than a very structured, systematic thing. So hopefully you're getting to that point. All right, so let's talk about awareness and cultivating this skill of awareness. I have a quote in my, I think it's my level 3 or level 4 Reiki manual by Frank Petter. Frank Petter is a well-known Reiki master teacher. He lives in Japan and teaches Reiki over there, and he's an author of several books. But I really, really love his quote about awareness. He says, "Awareness is the master key. It opens all doors and gives everything you do, think, feel, and perceive a totally different quality. With awareness, it does not matter so much what you do, but how you do it. When one works with awareness, the teaching begins to have a life of its own. And instead of merely passing on technical knowledge, you enter the world of transmission. The spark jumps from one candle to another." So not only as you're opening the door for yourself to growing and learning and being your best self, and ultimately experiencing what it feels like and what it means to have peace and fulfillment in the present moment, regardless of your circumstances, it will inevitably have a ripple effect. It will inevitably affect your children, your husband, your friends, anyone you encounter, and then it will go on. One spark jumps from one candle to another, and we get to participate in raising the vibrational frequency of the entire planet. And that's a really cool thing. And it has to start from within, with ourselves, right? So awareness is the master key. So what is awareness, and how do we break it down? And this is how I have awareness broken down. All right. Okay. I'm going to actually, no, I'm not going to screen share just yet. Okay, so I have awareness broken down into two main categories, or two main, I guess, sub skills. I don't know what to call it. But number one is discernment, and number two is transparency. Discernment is the ability to really get clear on what exactly is truth. What's exactly going on right here, right now, right? What's exactly the most valuable information or data that I can gather right now to help me move forward into further growth and understanding. And the second is transparency, honesty with yourself and others, like 100% honesty. And it starts with being honest with yourself. And I'm so excited to dive into this a little deeper. But let's start with discernment. So discerning what's actually truth. So what is truth versus what's false? I mean, it's that simple, right? And, you know, we talked a little bit last week about, okay, so it's important to first identify and feel and acknowledge what feels real, right? And until you can acknowledge what feels real and give it a voice, give it some love and some nurturing, as if that, whatever that was, those feelings, is a small child coming to you with a scraped knee. And instead of brushing them aside and saying, suck it up, buttercup, go play, we put that child on our knee and we say, tell me about it. What happened? How do you feel? And the child might be telling you all kinds of false information, but it feels real to that child. So acknowledge that inner child in you, acknowledge those real feelings, those human nature feelings, even if they are yucky and ugly, and at least what you perceive as really uncomfortable. I'm going to take a moment, and because I'm feeling to share, I did a Facebook Live, but it doesn't look like anybody saw it. So I'm going to repeat myself because I feel like it goes along with what we're talking about. It goes along with this discernment of what's truth, and it also goes along with transparency and honesty. Sometimes we can get so caught up in what feels real that, or sometimes we can, actually, I'm going to reword that. Sometimes we can be so scared of the discomfort of what feels real that we completely disconnect from it. And this is a word for that in psychotherapy, is disassociation. There's a spectrum of disassociation, and there's different ways that I've observed in energy work and emotional release and mindfulness that this disassociation can actually happen. And I worked on a client last week that was the classic example of disassociation, what that feels like. And so she was talking, the words that she was saying out of her mouth were really hard, horrific things. But she was saying them in this strange, like almost happy voice. And well, this is just what it is. And I just got, and she kept having to tell herself and tell me that she's so blessed, that she has such a great life, and things are so good, and that she should be grateful, and all of the shoulds, right? We know shoulding is so messy. Like, we don't need to should upon ourselves. But she was doing a lot of that. And it was like this weird, interesting phenomenon where I felt the depth of what she had endured sitting in her body, and I could see how it was holding her back. But consciously, she was so disassociated and disconnected from the reality of how that really feels to her. And so I couldn't get her to shift until she, on some level, was able to actually connect with those raw emotions, because she had programmed herself to disassociate from them because they were too uncomfortable. Or maybe she did actually say some things out of her mouth like, well, it's not okay for me to feel them because it's not Christ-like. It's not nice. It's not kind. And so I think sometimes we hold ourselves back from really feeling it because we're not only afraid of the discomfort that we feel when that energy moves through us, because sometimes it's physically uncomfortable sometimes, especially if we have and emotionally uncomfortable if we have programming that says, suck it up, buttercup, or it's not okay to cry, or it's weakness to cry, or it's too vulnerable to cry because I feel super unsafe because I've never had really anybody in my life that can hold a space of love and safety for me. So I've gotten in a habit of not feeling it, right? So this disassociation and disconnect starts to happen. And it is absolutely vital that you give yourself honor yourself with the vital importance of connecting to the real rawness, the primal rawness of those actual feelings. And that might involve some really ugly words that come into your mind, some name calling, some victimhood, some stuff that may not ultimately serve the highest good forever, but it does serve a purpose in helping you get to the next step. And until you fully connect to what feels real, you cannot move on to what is actually true. And I cannot say that enough times because I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times where that to me is actually one of the most powerful ways that, I guess one of the most common things that I see that hold people back from going to the next level of transformation and growth and awareness and connection is because they aren't allowing themselves to actually feel what was the impact of what felt real. Okay, so what is true versus false? What can I be 100% certain is true in this moment? I've been thinking about the dishes at my house in regards to this principle. And, you know, my children who I'm teaching them how to do dishes. And so the dishes are not most often not done how I would do them. And there's dishes in the sink more often than not because I'm trying to teach them and allow them to do this. So there's been a lot of this sort of practicing of what feels true versus in myself and the judgment I feel towards them, what feels real versus what's actually true. And so I was noticing and observing within myself some judgments of like things like thoughts like this. My kids have zero respect for me because I have told them 1,000 times how to do the dishes and how to do it right and how to finish the job, right? And so they're just not interested. They don't even care. And therefore they don't respect me. And so that's what felt real about it all. Or they're selfish. Or so that you notice that there's when something feels real but isn't actually truth, there's name calling, like blaming, and excuses. Those are three really key things that you can observe within yourself of, okay, I'm not really, this is what feels real, but I don't think it's truth because I know I'm making excuses. I'm in blame, and I might be name calling, which is kind of part of blaming. So I'm blaming my kids, calling them, you know, names basically in my head. But that wasn't what's actually true. What's actually true is on the most basic core level, my kids did not do the dishes the way I like them done. That's it, right? That's the most basic truth of the whole situation. They didn't do it. And it might be that they haven't, maybe they don't care, but I don't know that for sure because they haven't actually told me that they don't care, right? So I can't be 100% certain that that's true. It might be true that they haven't developed the skill yet, that they need more practice. I'm still not absolutely sure that that's true either. It could be true that they just don't care, right? That they haven't told me that. So I don't really know unless I have a conversation with them. So a conversation happened with my son, and I was expressing my disfavor and frustration, and it was very judgmental, and a lot of that shame and judgment came into my verbiage and how I was feeling towards him, as he hadn't rinsed any of the dishes. And so they were just all caked with all this food, and I got really upset. And so finally I took a deep breath and I was like, all right, son, let's you and I together. All right now, this is what feels real to me. And then you can share what feels real to you. And why don't we connect together to what's actually true? And in that moment, he was actually able to say, you know what, Mom, I have a game I want to play, and I just didn't want to spend the time to do it right. I actually do know how to do it right, but I just didn't want to because I have something else that's more important to me. And that was so powerful. I was like, whoa, way to step in, and we'll talk about this more, way to step into full transparency and honesty, bud. But it actually helped diffuse my energy of like, oh, well, now I had a real conversation with him and I actually got to connect with him. I'm not angry anymore. I understand him better. Would I prefer that he did it right? Yes. But just having that conversation was really powerful, and it helps me shift within me a lot of that shame and judgment. So what is true versus false is what can I absolutely 100% certain is truth. And then the next part of discernment is really refining the skill, your ability to distinguish between what feels real versus what is absolutely true. And one way that you can do that is you can make a list. You can make a list either mentally or you can write it down, and you just start writing out, all right, this is what feels real. And what's great is this can be you're feeling it. You can be doing that. Making your list can actually be a dual benefit, right? Because you're feeling it, you're acknowledging it, and at the same time, you're trying to kind of discern and refine your ability to recognize what feels real versus what is absolutely true. And so when I'm making my list, I first just write it all down, and then, or I just kind of let it all come out in my words or in my mind, from forefront of my mind. And then I kind of mentally or writing it down, pen and paper, I kind of create two categories, right? What feels real versus what's 100% true. And I just go through that initial list and I'll say, all right, can I be 100% certain this is true? And if I can't answer yes from the get-go, like immediately, then it stays in that list on that left column. And then until I find what's actually true. And I might find that my initial list has zero truth in it. And that's okay, because you're letting yourself feel what feels real. But then you may have to go a little bit farther to refine. All right, okay, at some point I got to connect to what's truth here, because I need actual, truthful, valuable information and data in order to progress from here. And so what's actually true? Okay, he didn't do the dishes the way I would want them to be done. He didn't rinse the dishes. And if you don't rinse the dishes, it clogs up the dishwasher, right? That's what's actually truth. And he also, what was also true is he made an effort to do the dishes. He just didn't do them in the way that I wanted them done, or the way that would get them clean. So as you refine what feels real versus what is absolute truth, this is the real, like, it's just powerful process of getting, again, gathering that data that will be most useful to you moving forward and creating the change that you desire. All right. All right. The next aspect of discernment is discerning what belongs to you and what doesn't. Those of you that came on the Q&A on Thursday, we actually were able to help Maria Meekum through a process to connect with what feels real versus what's truth, right? And we were able to discern that all that stuff and energy she was carrying didn't even belong to her, wasn't even hers, and was easy to just release. So this is what's exciting about connecting to what's even yours or what isn't yours, is if it's not yours, it usually goes away really easily. And it doesn't necessarily hasn't made a big enough impact to create a very deep neural pathway in the brain, unless it's been around for a while, right? And we've allowed it to make an imprint. In that case, then some aspect of that is ours, because we've chosen to allow it to stay. We've chosen it to become part of our belief system and our programming. And so then it has, in a sense, become ours. But if we can identify that it didn't originally come from our choice, that either we empathed it, either it was a DNA programming, a generational thing, or a cultural programming belief system, whatever it is, then it can shift a lot easier and a lot quicker. All right, and then the last aspect of discernment is present moment versus past or future. And again, we've already talked about how shame and judgment takes us out of the present moment. Worry and fear takes us out of the present moment. And anger also takes us out of the present moment, because anger is, I had actually a student in my last Reiki class last week, a week and a half ago, share the anger. How did she say it? Anger is the bodyguard to hurt and pain. So anger is actually a secondary emotion, and it's a really great clue that there's some deeper hurt there. So in your observations, be like, oh, I'm really angry. Awesome. It's illuminating, it's bringing my attention to some deeper hurt here, which is really great, because I'm gathering that information that's going to be useful to me, right? So present moment versus past or future. What feels real can be all about the past, can be all about the future, but the truth is all about what's in the present moment, right here, right now, what's actually truth, right? And if it's not happening right here, right now, in the present moment, it might feel real, but it isn't necessarily truth. Okay. So in your discernment, and while you're developing the gift, the ability to discern in your observations, distinguish between, number one, what's true versus what feels real or is false, and refining that skill and that ability to really, I guess, fine tune the distinction of what feels real and what feels versus what's actually true. And number two, what's yours, what isn't yours? And number three, am I in the present moment or am I in the past or the future, right? Bringing it home to what's true in the moment. Okay, so that's discernment. Let's move on to transparency and honesty. This is a fascinating one to me. And I'm going to use one of my kids as an example again here in a moment. But 100% transparency. I've seen the power of this, especially with people healing from addiction. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Every single human being on this planet has an addiction problem. Whether we're addicted to a substance, whether we're addicted to sex or pornography, something like more visible and shameful in the cultural perspective, whether it's food, whether it's Facebook, social media, gaming, whether it's sleep, whether it's negative thinking, self-deprecation, criticism, judgment, whatever. Like, we all have an addiction problem on some level. And I'm finding that the pathway to healing from addiction is, first of all, clearing all the shame and judgment, letting that go, and seeing things as they really are, and loving things as they really are, but being fully transparent with ourselves and honest with ourselves. How am I contributing to this situation? Is what I'm saying and how I'm showing up honoring the highest good? Is it am I being part of the solution or part of the problem? And also being really honest with yourself about how other people are showing up for you. Are you sticking to some story of victimhood and not even able to really connect with what's true about how they're seeing you? So this ability to really see what's truth versus what feels real or is actually false has to involve honesty and transparency. You have to be willing to humble yourself, really, and open yourself up to the discomfort and the vulnerability of looking at yourself in the mirror with full honesty and transparency. It can make your skin crawl. It can terrify you. And I can tell you from personal experience that this is really true, because I'm on the ADHD spectrum, and one of the most common attributes that ADHDers share is a heightened fear or terror of rejection, and they call it rejection sensitivity. And it can go so far as being what they call a dysphoria, because it can so disconnect you, that fear of rejection, that shame and that judgment, and a fear ultimately of not being loved, right, can so disconnect someone from what's actually true that they have completely lost all sense of reality, and they live in kind of an alternate reality. I was starting to observe this with my son. He's 17, and man, he's such a great kid, but he's also on the spectrum, and he shares this similar anxiety, social anxiety, fear of rejection, rejection sensitivity. And it was like between the ages of 12 and 14 where he started, and it's a good thing that I'm really intuitive, because he became a really great liar. So much so that he had convinced himself that a lot of things were true. Like I would say, hey, did you bring up your laundry? Yep, totally brought my laundry. And nope, hadn't brought up his laundry. Just things like he would just respond to me every question I would ask him. Yep, totally did that, Mom. Yep. And then when I would confront him, like, hey, buddy, you didn't do this. You told me that you did. It feels like you're lying to me. He's like, what? I didn't lie to you. And he would freak out. And I could tell that it was genuine freak out. It wasn't like, oh no, you caught me, Mom, freak out. It was like, wait, no, I really thought I did that. And so his grades really suffered, because he would genuinely think that he was turning things in and showing, because he had completely become disassociated, right? He had become disconnected. His spirit wasn't fully in his body. The fear of the shame and the judgment and the rejection was so strong and so powerful that it did not allow him to see things as they really are. Because he was afraid that if he saw things as they really were, he would see what a horrible, bad person he was. Broke my mama heart. But I was so much like him at that age, and I get that. And I think that whether you have rejection sensitivity or not, every human being has an innate divine need to be seen, heard, and loved. And so sometimes, especially when there's a significant amount of trauma there, humans will go through great lengths to find love. And oftentimes it's through really unhealthy ways. And that disconnect from what's really true, and that ability to be fully transparent and honest with themselves is lost and gone. And so I've had so many clients over the years dealing with addiction, and their marriage is on the rocks because they've been unfaithful somehow through that, maybe a porn addiction or sex addiction or whatever it might be, or video, whatever it is. I've seen that those who really progress and heal long-term permanent are the ones who are willing to be 125 million% honest with themselves and say, yep, this is what I did, and I don't like it one bit. Yep, this is what happened, and these are my patterns. For them to be able to really look in the mirror and see, that's when true change starts to happen and true healing starts to happen, is when they're able to shift into that full honesty and transparency. So how do we do this? How do we step into full honesty and transparency? All right, first of all is the shame check, right? All right, checking in. Am I allowing the shame to run and rule my emotions right now? Okay, and remember how I taught you last week how it's just that simple acknowledgement that, oh, hey, shame, I see you. And even though you're here, I'm not going to let you be in charge. You know, it's just that acknowledgement that it's there that can shift your energy out of the shame, even if there's shame programming present. Let yourself feel it, but without letting it own you and be in charge, right? Running that hamster wheel. Choose love. And this might be new to you. It was certainly new to me at one point. And I'm still learning on a physical level actually how to receive love and what that looks like. Choosing love, make a conscious choice to say, even though this happened, and I don't like the discomfort of it, I don't like the vulnerability, I don't like the consequences, I feel ashamed, I feel sad, I feel grief, whatever it is, even though I feel all of that, I still choose to love myself. I still choose to love what is in this moment, and I'm determined to get to the root of what's actually true. But until that happens, I'm going to love it just like it is. Come as you are, right? Give yourself the same dignity and courtesy to love yourself unconditionally like you would a stranger or someone else. Like if you find yourself telling your kids, hey, bud, I love you. Just come as you are. No matter what you do or say, you are lovable and you are valuable and you are important to me. And you don't have to do anything to earn that. Do we do that for ourselves? Are we taking that conscious effort and choice to choosing love for ourselves? Number 3, take personal responsibility. And I've already kind of brought this up in the beginning of introducing transparency is, what is my part in this? How am I contributing to the situation? You know, for years, I was blaming my husband for our financial situation. And I would get so angry at him because for many years, I was doing it all myself. And at the time, we were on food stamps and WIC, and I had little babies, and he was in grad school. His monthly income was $600 a month. Our rent was $425 a month, and we had to somehow live on what was left. So I was teaching voice lessons. I was doing Mary Kay, selling Mary Kay skincare products. And I was sick as a dog and depressed and suicidal, all of the things. And then, so when he came to me and said, hey, can I use some money to go golfing? I would go AWOL on him. I would go nuts. And it was like a lot of beliefs and stories started going through my mind because I'm the victim here, right? And my story of victimhood is so real to me, and it felt so real to me that he doesn't care. He's so clueless. He was raised by parents who don't da 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 da. And it's none of that was true. He was raised by amazing parents who were so healthy compared to how I was raised. And he did care. He just knew that he needed some self-care too, and was asserting his agency to say, hey, I want to go golfing. I think that would be good for me. I've been working hard, right? And so years later, when I finally was willing to step into personal responsibility, it was kind of it was a pretty vulnerable slap in the face reality check for me when I realized that I had actually been, on some ways, narcissistic and abusive emotionally and verbally to my husband. Now, he would not agree with me on this, but as I've studied narcissism and I've studied abuse, how people behave when they're in trauma brain, I was definitely abusive to him and to my kids. And I was at a point where I was ready to take personal responsibility for that. But part of taking personal responsibility meant that I had to grieve. And I had to really face the woman in the mirror and go, yeah, I totally did that. And I let myself feel it. And I tell you what, you guys, the truth, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. This is one of my favorite scriptures. And because it's true, the truth always sets us free. And as uncomfortable as it might feel to grieve or to see or to feel the shame and the judgment or whatever that might come with, wow, I totally did that. And that was hurtful to myself, to my children, to my husband, or whatever, or I messed up, right? It's so powerful to do that. I promise you. And it's so worth the discomfort. And remember, ready for my cliche quote, victimhood or vulnerability is power. Why? Because it opens the door to humility. Humility opens the door to teachability. Teachability leads us to knowledge, and knowledge is always more power. Perspective is power, right? Taking personal responsibility. And the last one is really connecting with that, whether you're in victimhood mentality. Now, there is a difference between victimhood mentality and actual legit victimhood. You know, I can say, okay, I was violently raped, therefore I am a victim to a perpetrator who raped me. That is absolute truth, right? But when I go into victimhood mentality is when I spend years down the road blaming my perpetrator for my happiness. That it's his fault, that I'm so screwed up from that trauma that I now am completely at the mercy of this traumatic experience and can never choose to have happiness and move on with my life. That's victimhood mentality. So in full, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're trying to get real with yourself here. Yeah, just get real with yourself. Am I an actual victim, or have I moved into creating a story about my situation that is emotionally based, that's victimhood mentality based, and is that serving me or not? This is very, very important. Again, a few clues as to whether you're in victimhood is blaming. If you're blaming, making excuses. Those two things. Okay? Or wallowing. And okay, so we're wrapping up here. Taking awareness, using awareness to take the skill of observation deeper. So let's just do a quick recap. Awareness is a mixture of discernment and full transparency and honesty. Discernment is all about creating that distinction, really refining your ability to really recognize what's truth versus what feels real. What's yours? What isn't yours? Am I in the present moment? Or am I dwelling in the past? Or am I fearful of the future, which hasn't even happened yet? And then being fully transparent and honesty. Have I checked shame at the door, or have I loved on shame? Am I choosing into love, making a conscious choice to do that? Am I taking full personal responsibility? Am I in victimhood mentality, or am I just acknowledging the pain of being an actual victim and the truth of what that is? Okay. So I've created a guide for you guys. I'm going to screen share this here. I'm getting lots better at this, you guys. Okay. So I call this a practical guide to identifying, clarifying, and releasing. We kind of went over this, I gave you sort of a sneak peek at the Q&A on Thursday when I was working with Maria. And this is a more clear guide as to identifying, clarifying, and releasing. Mila, if I remember right, I think I gave you a different version of this that's actually in my Reiki manual. For the purposes of Guru, I would focus on this one. Okay, and this is found in the files section of week 3, module 1. Okay. And so let's just go through this really quickly in the last few minutes that we have. And we started a little bit late, so I'm going to say we still have 10 minutes. Okay. So when we're practicing identifying, clarifying, and releasing, the first thing that you need to do is really get clear on what's happening, right? You want to identify the emotion, or is it a belief? Is it a thought? Is it a behavior? Is it a pattern? Trust what comes to you first. This is not about, and I repeat, this is not about digging for things. It's so much simpler if you allow yourself to just be present with what comes on the surface, right? What's that immediate thing that comes to your mind? And it may not make any logical sense at all, but always trust what comes to you first. And then identify where it is sitting or manifesting in your body. This is how you, again, how you can take observation a little bit deeper of what, and in the sense of, okay, I'm really going to give myself permission to feel this, but at the same time, I want my spirit to stay connected to my body. So where is it sitting in my body? And you may not understand what that means initially as you're new to this, but if that's the case, then just say, where do I feel tension in my body right now? Okay, and just kind of take a moment to pay attention. Where am I feeling tension in my body? Okay, so identify. And then number 2, ask the question, is this even mine? Trust the first answer that comes, right? If the answer is no, then use the breath to release it from your body, mind, and spirit. Okay, so it's intention moves energy. And if the answer you get is no, then just use the breath and say, I let it go. Say return to sender in full consciousness, or, sing the song, return to sender, whatever you got to do, let it go with your intention. Clear the clutter of what isn't yours. If the answer is yes, then use this guide to help you know where to go next. What feels real? Acknowledge the experience. What part of what feels real is actually 100% truth? What part of what feels real is not truth? What needs my love and attention the most? And when I ask this question, I'm asking what is giving me, I think this was the question that I asked when you were connecting to your why, is what's lighting up the most for me, what's giving me the strongest emotional or physical response. Those are some really tangible ways that you can figure out what needs your love and attention the most. Do I want this? Right? You're asking the question, is this something that I want? Because it's not even about whether it's yours or not. Like, do I want this to stay? Is this a belief? Is this a thought? Is this a programming that is something I want in my life? Okay. Does this serve the highest good? And then the last question is this ready to go and be released? Simply use your intention and the breath to release all that no longer serves the highest good. Okay. And so you're kind of you're asking questions to get the juices flowing, to create clarification, to open your perspective, and then you're trusting what comes first. Trust the first answer that comes to you that's already on the surface. We're not digging here. We're just trying to clarify, okay? So here's an example script that I have here. It's my intention to release, say the emotion or belief, ... from all parts of my physical, mental, and spiritual bodies on every layer and level throughout all dimensions of time and space. I have found that so many things that are deeply ingrained in me are there on multiple dimensions. And I believe that God knows no time or space. And I believe that we existed before we came to this earth, that our intelligence of who we are has lived for a very long time, and we don't really know, and we've had other experiences, right? And so when I clear things, I like to cover all my bases, and I like to go to the depth and the breadth of the possibilities of how and where and when these things attached to me or became a part of me. And sometimes I like to add, I do this with gratitude through the pure love of Christ, or if it honors you best, through the power of unconditional love, or through Christ consciousness, or whatever, or through the power of the universal divine, whatever works for you. All right, and then step 3, what to do for those things that need love and attention. Okay, so if there is something that needs love and attention, here are some things you can do. Sit with them and really feel them. Cry it out, breathe into it, let the energy move, write it out. Don't spare anything. And when I mean don't spare anything, like, you guys should see what comes down on my paper sometimes. And it's not pretty. And it could sound like the words of a psychopath. But it's so freeing and healing just to get it out. Talk it out. Talk to specifically to that particular emotion. And you can do this in privacy or in your car while you're driving. And some people might think you're weird and crazy, whatever, who cares? You're doing your thing. So talk specifically to that particular emotion, that thought, that belief, that programming, that behavior, physical symptoms, or whatever. Give it a voice. Allow it to teach you. And then talk back, express love and understanding in return. Okay, this is a really powerful skill that you don't even need to go to talk therapy to do this. You don't have to. And I'm not saying talk therapy is bad, disclaimer, but you don't have to talk to a friend or a spouse. Like, you can have this conversation with yourself or with your body or with that belief or that thing, that trigger that has come up with you, as if it were its own being and entity, or your inner child, whatever. Give it a voice, have a conversation. It's very, very powerful. Call in an advocate, living or past, to be there for support. And then allow yourself to be present with what's happening in the support that happens. Make it right. Apologize or make amends with anyone that you hurt or offended. All right, so and then when things have moved and you've looked at it and you're beginning to you've gathered the information you need to start maybe making a different choice, creating new neural pathways in the brain, then you get to start to create. And this is the fun part. Creating your beautiful life. What do you want to create into the future? Determine, this is part of the skill of observation, right? Where you're making a conscious choice of reaction and action. So determine the desired response for next time. Choose a new belief grounded in what is true, something that can replace the old one. Work with the level that you are currently. And this is really, really important. If you're trying to make a big, huge, giant leap into no man's land, or a place where you've never gone, without staying kind of tethered to current evidence and current, I guess, skills that you've already developed, it's important to stay grounded and connected to where you are, and not to get yourself to go faster than you have strength or beyond what you can comprehend. And I gave an example of this last week, where I was saying, okay, your spirit isn't going to believe if you go to the extreme of changing your belief to something that doesn't even resonate with you at all. It has to be like what resonates with you right now. Even if it says, okay, up until now, I haven't believed that I'm good enough. I'm ready to choose something different. I'm ready to begin the process of what it feels like or what it looks like to believe I'm enough. Instead of I am enough. That might not ring true for you yet. And so trust, work with what you have. Work with the level where you are currently. And then lastly, celebrate. Give yourself a pat on the back. Smile. Do a victory dance. Express gratitude for the lesson. Get clear on what did you learn. Write down what you learned. I mean, there's so many ways that you can celebrate, but it's so, so important. The celebration actually helps lock it in to your brain. It helps really make a powerful gesture to your brain to say, okay, this is the new neural pathway that we're creating here, and we're making serious efforts here to make it a primary pathway. So celebrate. Celebrating is so powerful. All right. So we are out of time and I finished the content for today. So your homework for today, I'm going to remind myself of what your homework for the week, and I will have this posted in the course page, is to finish your reboot and reset or keep working on it. Okay. Continue practicing the skill of observation, but go deeper with awareness, right? Bring discernment and transparency and honesty into the picture here. And then use the file when you, in the process of trying to work through things, allow the energy to move, release it, or just get more clarity in gathering your information and data moving forward. Use the file, a practical guide to identifying, clarifying, and releasing to help you, to support you. All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming on today. I'm so excited for all the changes. I'm looking forward to celebrating with you on Thursday at 6 o'clock because I want to start hearing more about what changes you're seeing. What are the blessings that you're seeing from these principles that you're learning and practicing and putting into practice? I'm excited. Write down your questions. Let me know ahead of time what your questions are so that I can more adequately plan for the Q&A. I want to make sure that if we end up having a lot of people on there, that I can give everyone the attention that they need and desire. Before I sign off here, I just realized that Mila, you wrote something. Being impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your words. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love by Don Miguel Ruiz. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's from the book, The Four Agreements. That's a book I have not read and that I get to add to my list. All right, thank you, Mila. And thank you, everyone. I hope you guys have a great week. Again, use the Facebook group page as a way to ask questions, connect with me, tag me if you need a quick answer, or you can send me a private message, it's fine. And we'll see you Thursday at 6. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.